So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelist for today. Tara Kiley, a frequent flyer at our cafes, is our client solutions strategist. She's dedicated her 20-year career to working with business leaders to elevate their people strategy and operations. Today, Tara works closely with our clients to design HR solutions that meet them when and where they want to go. Our guest speaker today is our very own Greg Collette, our HR Collaborative's very own Director of Technology and Administration. Throughout his career, Greg has focused on the intersection of technology, communication, and collaboration. At HRC, he ensures our staff have the tools, resources, and information they need to help our clients make work better. So let's hand it over to our panelists for today. Good morning, Tara and Greg.
Good morning.
Great.
Welcome, and thank you all for joining us today. And I know this is a very hot topic that we want to talk about today. And it's something Greg and I in HR Collaborative have been watching and researching and talking about and actually starting to use over the course of the past several months as artificial intelligence has become more of a hot topic, especially in the human resources world. So today I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you, Greg, about some of the insights that you have as it relates to AI. So let's first talk about, tell us HR professionals, what is artificial intelligence?
All right. Yeah. So what is AI actually? AI has been, as Tara mentioned, a hot topic, a buzzword, especially starting really November of last year with the release of ChatGPT 3.5, and really picked up steam in the first part of this year and has only continued to accelerate from a conversation standpoint. So wanted to kind of lay some groundwork, talk a little bit about first what AI is not, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it is. So first of all, what is AI not? It is not intelligent. I think that's the first thing that's really important for HR professionals to really think about. It's not the Terminator, it's not Skynet, it's not HAL, it's not Sunny from iRobot, or it's not Scarlett Johansson from Her. That there's a lot of hype going around. There's a lot of exaggeration on what these tools can do. A lot of marketing fluff around what they can do as well. How they're either going to solve all the world's problems or destroy the world. And I think it's really important as HR professionals to realize that it's neither of those things. These are tools that are very powerful and when used correctly can have a very beneficial impact. But at the end of the day, they are tools. They're not thinking, they're not contextualizing, they don't have personalities. I liked these examples here, especially with some of the human faces showing here. It's especially with ChatGPT, which does a great job of mimicking human language. We tend to be very quick to ascribe human personalities to something that can write and talk like a person. So we have to be very careful not to anthropomorphize. That's my big word of the day. Anthropomorphize these tools. At the end of the day, they don't understand what they are, what the information that they are bringing forward. They don't think. They're just a series of algorithms that are taking information and giving you outputs. I think it's also important. There's kind of these two in these pictures here, two sides of it. You got this existential threat to humanity. They're going to destroy the world, and then you've got these. They are living, breathing beings that we need to really be thoughtful, mindful about their personalities and the emotions behind it. Those kind of miss the point of what we need to pay attention to when it comes to these tools. Because these tools are here, they're being used. They're not at the existential threat level yet, but they're also not these very human thinking machines. They are, going to the next part, what they really are extremely efficient pattern recognition and regurgitation tools. These tools take enormous amounts of data. What makes them, ChatGPT, others, just a significantly different than what we've had in the past? We've had predictive analytics, machine learning in the past, but what really makes them different is that they are extremely efficient at taking huge, enormous data sets. So we're talking trillions of data points and taking disparate data points. So from a ton of different data sources, whether that's images, text, from different systems, scraping websites, taking all that information and then finding novel patterns that a human could never find or would never be able to see and never be able to ingest that amount of data and then look at it. And previous automations that we had just could never scale to that level. What makes these tools really different than past tools is that the way that they find these patterns and the way that they interpret data is it's unsupervised. So in the past, algorithms were very focused, or they were built very meticulously by experts to ensure that they did certain things. That's just not scalable when you want to look at huge data sets. So these tools, in a sense, are given a large amount of data, and then they figure out what the interpretation is. So that can be great. That can be very interesting and useful data or patterns that are recognized that, again, we would miss because we have very small data sets and we're only human. But then at the same time, they can also be very biased and they can be very oriented to uncovering things that just from a common sense perspective don't work, don't make sense, or are misleading. And so that's why I like also the word regurgitation on what these algorithms are doing. They're just bringing stuff back up. They can do it extremely fast and they can make it look like what they took in. So from a language perspective, again, we just have this affinity to something that can speak like us and speak with us, we think is intelligent. ChatGPT is extremely good at writing, at human language. It knows human language really well, but it doesn't know anything else, really. It doesn't know anything. It is all the tool is doing is predicting, having looked at huge data sets of language. It's just predicting what the next most likely word is in response to the question that you ask. It can parse your question really well, and then it can give an answer that looks like, or a response that looks like an answer, because it's looked at a ton of responses to similar questions. And so all it's doing is just regurgitating what it thinks is most likely to be said next. And so from a reader standpoint, that it seems very, very accurate because it's a very good writer, because that's what it's built around, is writing and language. But that doesn't mean it doesn't know what its answers are. It doesn't know what it's saying. It can't contextualize what it's saying. It can just say very different and make it sound very good.
So for those of us who've tried out some of these tools, like I myself have tried out ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It asks when you put the information in and then you ask for a response, it will ask you after the response, is this a good response or not? So how is that used in the process?
Yeah, so these tools, because they're unsupervised, they don't have in a lot of ways, they don't have people that are reviewing how they're working and ensuring that they're working. The methods that they're using to solve these problems are the correct methods. One of the best ways to continue to improve the system is to give it more inputs. And so when it's asking, is this a good response? It's not a good response. What it's doing is it's trying to gauge, or what the system is learning from your response. It's improving its response. And again, it's not trying to improve its accuracy. What it's really trying to, and again, I'm using the word trying. It doesn't have its own volition. It's not living, breathing. It doesn't have its own agency. But what the system is doing is it's improving the likelihood that you're going to say the response is right. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's improving its accuracy in the response. It's just getting better at giving responses that you feel are better.
Got it.
So yeah, you're not not improving the accuracy in responses to it. It's just, yeah, making it better at predicting the most likely answer that you're gonna like.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because I have actually, if any of you today too, if you've tried out the ChatGPT, or there's plenty of other ones too, that are out in the marketplace right now. Some are free, some are not. And when you try it out, it'll give you something that is pretty interesting. But I have tried it out with like policies, or even give me some stats. And I myself have had experience where the tool has spit out a couple stats that I couldn't find the information on it, nor could I confirm that these statistics or this information that they were saying was actually accurate. And in some cases it wasn't.
Yeah, the tools have a tendency to what's being called now, the technical term is hallucinate. They'll just make up answers that they don't have information. Again, they're just predicting what's going to sound likely correct. There's been cases where people have used generative AI to try to write. I know a lawyer tried to write a brief and submit it, and it made up a ton of different. They didn't fact check it, made up a ton of cases that didn't exist, and they submitted it with their brief, and nobody could find any reference to any of them. There have been multiple times where these tools will make up links, statistics, links, because again, it's just trying to. What it's been trained on doing is writing extremely well and convincingly, not accurate.
Well, I think that's enough of the challenge that we wanted to present with you guys, and would love to turn it back over to Lisa now. Be assured, after your first breakout, we will come back and start talking about how HR can utilize these tools effectively, and what might be helpful for moving forward. So I'll turn it over to Lisa.
So before we head out to our breakout sessions, is there anything in particular that HR should understand about AI that we haven't covered already?
Yeah,
I forgot about that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple things specific to HR. I'll go to the first point. So first is that these tools are already being incorporated into most enterprise level software. Perfect example is Zoom right now. I set the setting to adjust for low light. So this isn't what you're seeing on the screen, is that our natural lighting. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you here have used the touch-up feature in Zoom or Teams or the others? One that's happening in the background that a lot of us haven't noticed at all is the noise suppression. When the pandemic started, everybody, and these can have, it's subtle, but they can have real world effects in our perceptions. Because when the pandemic started, there was a lot of discussions around, keeping in mind the distractions that are at home and being real with each other about what real life is. It's okay when your dog barks. It's okay when your baby cries or the kids are being loud in the background. We haven't noticed that Zoom, Teams are all filtering out those sounds now. We were just having a meeting a couple days ago, yesterday, when somebody's dogs were barking in the background, or playing in the background, and they apologized for it, and none of us in the room could hear it. So it's those things that the things that we think we're seeing and information we're getting, those are already being filtered by these tools. They're already being incorporated into pretty much any enterprise software. So it's already happening and changing the way that we get information, that we see information. It's already disrupting industries. Case in point, the writers and actors guild strikes right now. A huge component of those strikes is the use of AI to, whether that's for extras being scanned before they go onto the movie set, and signing away their likeness for perpetuity to be used in any kind of media afterwards, or writers concerned about the majority of sitcoms being run through a tool like ChatGPT, and them being their expertise being devalued. Those are ready examples, but almost every industry, whether it's a office job or it's in manufacturing on the ground, they are being affected by AI. These tools are reflective of its builders. I think it's really, really important. We have a bias to think that machines are quote unquote objective, that the information that we're getting from them has no bias. But these tools are as biased as their builders are, and especially if the builders are not being intentional about de-biasing. You can't unbias because they're using real world data. They're never going to be completely unbiased, but if the builders aren't intentionally building in stops and checks to ensure that there isn't bias or there's less bias in the system, all they're going to do is amplify bias. A great example is Amazon. Back in 2014, they built a applicant rating tool, and they fed it 10 years of data from their applicant tracking system, 10 years of data of how they rated candidates coming in. They ran it for a year and then realized that they weren't hiring any women. And when they actually looked under the hood, they realized, well, 10 years of data from our applications, we were only hiring in men. And lo and behold, the AI picked up on that. And not only was it rating men higher, it was, when they looked under the hood, it was actually penalizing women. When it saw the word women or woman in the application, it would penalize the applicant rating, and was picking up on penalizing several all-women colleges if it saw it in the text of the application. So it's really important that these tools, that the builders are from the beginning focusing on ensuring that there isn't bias in the system or minimizing it. Same with the data. If you put in bad data, you're going to get bad results. In data management, data sciences, the phrase garbage in, garbage out. That's really important to keep in mind with all these tools. What are the data sources that they're being fed? Because that has a huge impact on what they're going to regurgitate. And then last but not least, it's here to stay. So we're going to talk about how HR needs to tread lightly and intentionally with these tools, but HR cannot bury their heads in the sand about it. These tools are already here. They're already disrupting industries, and they're only going to become more prolific and more a part of everyday work. So it's something that HR needs to get ahead of, and we'll talk a little bit more about that after we come back from the breakout sessions.
And one thing, I'm not going to jump in to have you answer this question right now, Greg, but Addie had dropped in the chat, what AI platforms do you recommend? And I know that can be a very complicated question depending on what you want it to do. So I figured I'd just toss that out there for something to noodle that we can come back to maybe at the end or follow up with. So thanks for throwing that out to the group, Addie. So what we'd like to know now is, what is your experience with AI? We're going to have about 15 minutes in these breakout groups, and it's a great opportunity to chat with one another and kind of give a brief background of your organization you're with, or your position, how what you've been doing in HR, and then of course your experience with artificial intelligence. So everybody hang on to their seats. We're going to put you in one of our breakout groups. You'll have a facilitator from the HR collaborative team to get you started on the discussion. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everybody's zoomed back in over to us. What we're going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and it looked like there was some great discussion, and share with the larger group here the themes from the different breakout sessions. So one thing I noticed on there, which is probably pretty relevant for most, is there's a concern about proprietary information being shared. So if you're putting stuff into these AI bots and generating some stuff particular to your workplace, maybe how is that information then being used, and is it being shared elsewhere? Much like Tara mentioned, there's been some errors identified in the generated content. How reliable is this information? If we're using this tool, do we have to basically, recreate it? Some I noticed hadn't, used AI yet, whether by choice or just purely because you don't have a use for it in your, don't feel like you have a use for it in your regular day-to-day operations, but had some, had expressed some, concern. Where do we go to start learning about it? What tools are relevant? Much like the question we received. But those of you that have used it or had some experience, notice that it was used for both professional and entertainment purposes. The most common ones I saw bubble up from the breakout groups was, of course, creating email templates or policy drafts, starting out, getting you, at least a jumping off point. I saw mention on there web design, using AI to do web design, as well as help draft LinkedIn articles. There's also some of you that have used it for tips and tricks on, how to communicate with a boss or difficult coworkers, as well as personal things such as party planning, vacation ideas, that type of stuff. And really it's building, what I saw boil down to is really building that basic framework or a jumping off point to start from somewhere instead of starting from nothing. One of the questions or concerns from the group that I saw in our session was also, how do we help employees feel secure if we're going to be implementing artificial intelligence? Much to what Greg said, is that these aren't bots that are coming in to replace people, but it may augment the way that we work. So next, we're going to dive into, how to use AI or leverage it, especially as it's related to human resources. So without any delay, I'm going to toss it back over to Tara and Greg to get us started on that discussion.
Thanks, Lisa. So Greg, I think the themes are all things that we've heard, and that we've experienced ourselves as well, and things that we use it for and things that we probably don't use it for right now.
Yeah.
So how right now in our industry, in the human resources industry in particular, how is AI being used?
I'm going to point to this article, which I highly recommend spending some time checking out for everyone here today in the cafe, from Josh Burson on the next generation of HR software. We'll include a link in our recap email that will come out later today for all the registrants. But he does a very good job of breaking down some of the current uses of AI in HR and the future, and what is looking like to be the future of AI in HR. And now, again, thinking about AI in the sense of machine learning and pattern recognition. I mentioned the Amazon story that was back in 2014. These tools have been integrated into a lot of HR tech stacks already. I think a very common one that people may have seen or know of is just applicant screening, like Amazon's tool, but a lot of ATSs have some kind of applicant screening. Oftentimes they're very basic keyword-based screening tools, looking to see if the resume has those particular keywords in there, that they have been on the very uncomplicated side or on complex side of things. You get an arms race with those of then applicants writing in white text a bunch of keywords on the margins. Anyways, so it's already in a lot of HR applications, and I'll talk on the next slide a little bit about this. It's really important for, as HR professionals, to go and look at your HR tools to see if they're already, like Zoom, have they been incorporating things that you haven't quite been realizing are already a part of your software. That's critical. That's going to be a step one for everyone here on this call, is to look at your tools you already use, looking to see if they're already incorporated. So applicant screening, dynamic LMS content, or testing. So if somebody gives a particular answer, then they're given a different piece of content than somebody who gave another answer, or maybe how well they scored on a quiz, and so a lot of dynamic content generation is being built into LMS. Those are some of the common ones. Of course, you've got ChatGPT using those tools to write job descriptions, which I would not recommend, or policies. Some good points from the breakout rooms. These tools they can be useful for going from nothing to something. Having a blank piece of paper is often the hardest. Getting over that hurdle of going from a blank piece of paper to something on the paper is usually the hardest hurdle. A tool like ChatGPT, which again isn't good at giving accurate answers, but it's good at writing, can be a way to get you over that initial hurdle. Now, there are more tools, like Workday, LinkedIn, a few of the more enterprise level tools, ERPs, are starting to really incorporate more predictive analytics into the data that they have within the system to do things like skill matching, recommendations for promotion or recommendations on coaching. We've even looked at tools that based off of engagement surveys give customized recommendations to specific managers on how they can improve engagement within their staff. That's kind of where most of like the high-end software for HR right now is. But there's this upcoming generation of AI that it's going to be really interesting again with thinking about making sure that the data is debiased and the responses and results are as debiased as possible. But there's a new generation of software for HR that kind of, it's going to be a bit of a holy grail. It would be amazing to have where it takes your data within your organization and using validated, cleaned data across hundreds of thousands of millions of applicants profiles within industries, within specific functions, being able to match and predict success. So those tools are coming down the pike. For most HR teams, that's not going to be accessible at this point, but the past 10 years, machine learning has become more and more efficient and more cost effective. That's why you're starting to see it integrated into tools that you didn't realize it was even there. So over time, this is likely something that's going to become more and more available to HR, is being able to benchmark and be able to analyze their workforce from a broader perspective than just their local region or their local data that they have access to.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we probably have already some AI working in some of our tools and things and it may be still emerging, or it might still be AI built in, depending, like Workday, for example, or SAP, LinkedIn. It's already part of what we do, and we may not even know it. And so let's talk a little bit about how HR should prepare then. Like their companies, their leaders, and themselves to utilize these tools.
So we've got 7 recommendations. One, if you haven't, try out some free AI tools, ChatGPT being the obvious one. Just play around with it. Play around with these tools, get a sense of what they can do, maybe some of the limitations. It's very helpful to, if you have a very domain specific or area of expertise, like the back of your hand, see what kind of answers ChatGPT gives you. It's just it's good to get a sense of what it can do and what it can't do, and really where you need to tread lightly with using the tools. 2, can't stress this enough, work closely with your IT team about security and compliance. This came up, I saw it was one of the questions in the breakout room, is these tools, now they are, like ChatGPT is using trillions of data points. So it's very unlikely that your specific information that you were to upload would be fully replicated and given out to somebody else. But you are giving up data to these tools to improve the tool. So you need to be and this is something when vetting vendors, it needs to be one of the biggest conversations that you have with them is what are they doing with your data? How are you ensuring that this data is being housed correctly, that they're up to security and compliance standards, particularly if you're feeding any kind of PII, it has to be secured. So working closely with IT, and now this is just, I see AI and its effects on employees, on the workforce, is going to just bring HR and IT closer and closer together. And we'll get into some of the other reasons why.
I think something too that's worth mentioning from an HR perspective is that as a company and as an HR professional or leader, as a company leader, you are responsible for what you do. And so if you do have a software program that does use AI, and we've seen this because the EEOC has come out with rulings on this and with a standard now on it too, you are responsible for that. So if there is a bias in your tool that you purchased, you're on the hook. So just being very clear from the compliance and security component of understanding what you are getting your company into or what you're utilizing from a software perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point. Pulse check current AI usage and sentiment in your organization. I've heard from a lot of HR professionals or a lot of business leaders that, oh yeah, we're not using AI at all, when they have employees that are using ChatGPT all the time, or different tools. So it's helpful. It's going to be helpful for you to have an understanding of, is this already being utilized? Are people going out and finding these tools, using them? They cost, they're either, a lot of them are free, but they cost $20 a month. I mean, they're very accessible without having IT governance over them. So understanding if they're being used. The other big part of this is understanding sentiment. How do people feel about AI being used in the organization? Another resource we'll share after this event is a Pew Research article about general US sentiment around AI in the workplace. People don't like it, especially when it comes to making decisions around employees. So that's something that from HR needs to be hyper aware and hyper plugged into how your workforce is feeling about AI usage.
And I know there was a question prior to this when we asked about, should we start developing policies around AI? And, my recommendation would be, as it relates to AI, is exactly what Greg said. Get a pulse check of how you win the sentiment of your organization, your company, on how you do plan to use AI. And then instead of putting a policy in place right now, you're better off putting some guidelines in place. Because things are going to change. Things are going to be evolving. This is an emerging tool still. So I would recommend guidelines versus policies to start.
That's a great point. Next, audit the AI in your current HR tools. Again, they're already being incorporated into almost every enterprise software out there. Really, really avoid the hype. Try to cut through the noise. Every software company is saying that their AI can give you the world. They can't. Again, these are just complex algorithms that are very efficient in absorbing data. They're not Skynet. They are not going to solve all of your world's problems, and they are not objective. So really be, when looking at what your tools are saying that they can do, you need to be very skeptical of that, of what they're claiming. And also, to your point about the EEOC, is that HR needs in particular, but all employers, HR in particular, needs to be in conversation with their vendors about so the term that's you're going to hear more often is explainability. Can the software vendors explain how their system works? If they say they can't, it's proprietary, or they claim it's a black box, that's a red flag. Because if you don't know how it's making decisions, you can't ensure that it's not making biased decisions. If they can't explain it, you need to be think about ways that maybe that data can be, or those automations can be turned off, or are there other ways that you can verify that what the data, the results, and this is the next point. Establish regular independent reviews of AI generated results. So this is critically important, that you are outside of what you are getting, that you're not taking that as the truth with a capital T, that you are verifying that is not having a downstream effect that you didn't expect, especially from a bias perspective. So you want to ensure that you are regularly reviewing the data, reviewing the results of the recommendations, and using other sources to ensure that you're not you're not blindly being misled by these systems. The next, explore AI workforce upskilling opportunities. So of course there is AI in HR software, but these tools are going to be disrupting almost every job out. While they may not necessarily replace every job, it's going to become more and more of a requirement of many jobs to be able to work with these tools. So there are, colleges are starting to offer certification courses around AI. There's more and more upskilling opportunities. So this is an area too, thinking about from workforce development that HR can really lean into as well. How can you help ensure that your workforce is ready for these changes and using these tools effectively?
I love that too, because the more that our employees can feel confident and comfortable in something that could be helpful for them, and upskilling them into something, the more they're going to be less afraid of utilizing something that they have a fear may take over their role.
Especially around, there's a lot of ethical discussions that need to happen about using AI in the workplace. You got to have a proactive communication and change management plan. This is an area where HR, where step up, really be at the table, bringing the concerns of your organization and your workforce to leadership, and being able to that transparency and proactive discussion about how it's being used, when it's being used, why it's being used, and how you are ensuring that biases are being mitigated. That's going to make a world of difference in how it's perceived and how your workforce leverages the tool instead of fights back against it.
All right, I think we're all talked out of we're all chat GPT'd out. So why don't you guys go ahead, and I'll turn it over to Lisa to get you guys into your breakout rooms.
Yeah, so now that we've, solved all the world's problems around AI, at least in the HR world, right, Greg? Absolutely not, totally facetious. So we talked a little bit about how, HR is already using AI, whether it's technology or independent of the system you're using, and how we can kind of prepare for that second generation Greg was talking about. We're going to all break back out into the same breakout groups. We'd love to learn from you, from one another. What are your takeaways? What are some things that maybe that Greg and Tara talked about that you're like, oh goodness, these are really great things for us to do, or maybe here are some things that we're already working on in preparation for utilizing AI in our workspace. So everybody hold on to your seats. We're going to sail you back off to your breakout groups to continue that discussion and talk about the takeaways from today's session. Back, everybody's filtering on in. Hope you had some great discussion. I saw lots and lots of notes in your breakout groups. So really hope I do some justice in my recap, but it sounds like you guys had some great conversations. So, enjoy seeing what everybody takes away from these sessions. So from a very high level, some of the themes that kind of rose to the surface from the second breakout session is that we're all now really aware that AI has been used in HR for a long time. We're just now becoming aware of it because it's more and more prevalent and available outside of the systems we're using. I think what's really critical and a good takeaway is that as professionals, and when we're vetting these systems, expecting our vendors to have that explainability about how it's leveraged in their tools. Of course,
to that real quick, be very wary if you hear the word it's proprietary. That's going to be another red flag when talking with vendors, that they are not actively working, that one, they maybe don't know what's actually happening in their system, or two, they are not proactively ensuring that it's minimizing bias. So that word proprietary, run away from.
It's a red flag, huh, Greg? Great. And I think that's a really good add-on because you want to make sure that you can ensure compliance with state and federal regulations. There was a comment in the chat channel earlier about the labor laws in New York. So just trusting that AI generated content is compliant in all areas. And then of course, and California as well. There's lots of states, localities that have different regulations that AI is not going to necessarily be aware of. So make sure that you're being compliant both on the use of the AI tool, whatever tool you're leveraging, as well as the content it's generating. One thing that it was important, and I saw a lot of groups, maybe not verbatim, but what I really took away is that we really need to make sure we're using AI as a tool and not a solution. It's not going to be a replacement for a person or a job. but it may be a tool that is now going to be used that hasn't been before. So it talks about that upskilling, thinking about that upskilling and how we can learn to use it. Make sure that
Real quick to that point too, I think that tool word is really important to think about, and where AI is going to help HR in the longer term be more efficient and effective is with very specialized AI tools helping HR, very specialized to a function, to an industry, to a specific need. Tool AI like generative AI like ChatGPT are kind of seductive in the sense of like, oh, I can use this for anything and everything. How fantastic. But it's, it's the old adage, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You want to be very careful of just having one tool that you're using. HR is going to need to have multiple specialized tools in its tool set when it comes to AI to be effective, and not any one AI software is going to solve all of your issues.
Yeah, very great point, Greg. And I think that kind of gets to, thinking critically about what is being generated, not taking it at face value, and understanding if the tool is the right tool for the job you're looking for it to do. So in a couple of groups, programmers, tech skilled individuals are upskilling to learn how to leverage AI or how to program utilizing AI. So they're upskilling, but there's lots of industries where we can add that, just the exposure and experience and how to validate what's being generated from AI. So this is definitely an opportunity for upskilling. What I heard from all groups, and I'm sure Greg will absolutely agree, is that this is an opportunity for HR and leaders within an organization to really build a strong relationship with IT. Make sure that we're bringing them into the conversations and we're leveraging their expertise. This is critical from not only a security and compliance standpoint, but they may also have some great insight on how it can be leveraged, what tools to use based on the work that you're trying to accomplish. So they may be able to streamline some things as well. Yeah,
but butter them up, play to their, really make them feel special and needed. I saw a lot of questions too around, how do we vet these tools properly? What questions should we be asking? This is our IT strong suit. This is what they do on a day in and day out of vendor management, of cutting through the marketing fluff of what these software companies say they can do. Bring them early into the conversation, establish them as a critical piece to your ability to find and vet these software as well. So get them in early. Don't bring them in at the very end and say, hey, what do you think of this tool? Bring them early into the conversation so they feel a part of it. They are an invaluable resource when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. A couple other things, just organization wide, not even particular to AI, but just whenever something is, whenever there's a new external factor impacting organizations, we really should work on developing a proactive values-based change management plan with clear communication. This is going to help employees understand that, one, we're aware of what's out there, but two, how is it going to impact our industry, our job, and us personally? So making sure that it's clearly communicated and nobody feels like they're blindsided. And then it's also important to understand that AI will not impact all industries equally. There's some industries, the tech industry, obviously, Hollywood is being impacted, but there's other industries that are always going to require that human touch, that human component, where not all industries are going to be impacted the same. So understanding how it's impacting your particular industry, there's no one blanket solution for all organizations to follow. This has been such a wonderful topic, and there's just so many great things that you guys brought up in your breakout groups. But we're already running short on time. And so I'm sure Greg would love to sit around and talk about this all day. He's probably got lots of insights, but being respectful of everyone's time, we definitely want to, make sure that everybody can get on with their day as needed. So just a reminder, if you haven't already and you want to stay connected or in the know as to what HR Collaborative is working on and what's going on in the HR world, you can take out your phone and scan that QR code. Make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter to keep up on all things HR and what's happening in the know. Also, if you ever have any questions related to AI or not, anything people related, we'd love to have a conversation. You can connect with one of our experts for a free consultation if you just need a listening ear, a sounding board, or you're really wondering how to tackle a challenge that you're experiencing. You can scan that QR code and you'll be taken right to the scheduling software and be connected to one of our HR experts for that conversation. Save the date, everyone. So we've really enjoyed having these virtual events for our collaborative cafes, but we are going to be offering an in-person event in October. We know that this is the same week that MySherm is happening, and we'd love to welcome everyone to our offices to discuss the future of talent, AI included or not. So what are we looking towards the future and expecting from the talent lens? That will be on a Wednesday instead of our typical Thursday due to the conference, but we're looking forward to welcoming as many of you that can make it to our offices or to, depending on what the participation is, we may need a bigger space, but more details to come on that.
We've got some exciting guest speakers. We're not ready to quite announce yet, but watch your inboxes. We're really excited about the panel that we're building together for that event.
Yeah, so really excited to see many of you in person, and then obviously any additional participation options we'll include in an update. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. It has been a thrilling topic, and like we said, AI is here to stay, so I'm sure we'll hear even more. I wish you all the best in your Thursday pursuit of things. And like I said, please connect with us either via newsletter, chat with one of our professionals, or if any of the above, we'll just see you in October at our next collaborative cafe.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.